comparing fractions using the benchmark half. And why would we think about using this? Well, when we're comparing fractions, we would first look to see if the numerators or denominators are the same. And once we've eliminated that strategy, this is my next go-to strategy. And what we're doing is we're looking at the fractions to decide where on the number line they would fall in relation to 1/2. So I'm going to draw my number line. And I'm going to put 0 and 1. And then let's mark the halfway point. And the idea is to see, does the fraction fall in the less than category, meaning that it's on the number line, it would be less than 1/2? Or does it fall in the more than 1/2? And this more than 1/2 could go beyond 1, just the same as the less than could go beyond into the negative numbers to half. So we look to see where does it fall in relations to 1/2. So, and then from there we can tell which one is greater. So we have our more, we have our less, and we have equal to 1/2. The other thing we have to think about is if they're both in the less than category, that doesn't mean they're equal. It just simply means they fall in that space. And then we would have to go to a different strategy to figure out which is greater and which is less. The same as if they fall, both of them are in the more than category, that doesn't mean they're equal. It simply means that they both are beyond or greater than 1/2. And we would have to go to another strategy. If they're both equal to 1/2, then yes, they are equal. We then have to think about what is half of a number. Because while we're comparing it to 1/2, our denominators are what we're going to be looking at to decide what's half. For instance, if we have 4 as our denominator, half of 4 is 2. So this would be equal to 1/2. If we have 6, half of 6 is 3. It's equal to 1/2. What happens if the denominator is 5? Well, if the denominator is 5, we have to think about what is half of 5. Well, half of 5 is 2.5. And if you're not sure, you can put 5, and I'm going to think of them as cookies that we're sharing with someone. So each one of us gets 1, each one of us gets 1, and then there's this one left that will split down the middle, and 2.5. So half of 5 is 2.5. Well, we wouldn't write 2.5 as a fraction up here. But we would think about, well, half of 5 is 2.5. So based on whether or not we have more than 2.5 or less than 2.5 would help us decide if we have more than half or less than half. Okay, so let's get right into a problem. So Fred ran 6/9 of a mile and George ran 4/8 of a mile. Who ran farther? So in this situation, we're going to be comparing 6/9 and 4/8. So let's think about 9. What is half of 9? And again, if you're not sure, you can do the cookie comparison as well. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we share. Each one of us gets this, gets 1. We get 1, we get 1, we get 1. And then there's 1 in the middle for us to split. So 4.5 is half of 9. Well, we have 6 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which means we have more than what it takes to be half. So we're going to have more. So let's come over here to 8. And if we think about what is half of 8, well, half of 8 is 4. If you're not sure how I came up with 4, you could also do the cookie method. Each one gets 1, gets 1, gets 1, gets 1. There's not 1 in the middle for us to split. Okay, so here is that halfway mark, and we have 4 of them, which means we actually have 4. So this is equal to 1/2. And if we look at our number line again, I'm going to scroll up just a little bit, push it up a little bit, and we can see that 6/9 is more, so it's going to fall in this more category over here, and 4/8 is equal. Well, because it's in the more category, means it's beyond, it's closer to 1, then it is the greater fraction. So 6/9 is greater than 4/8, which means Fred ran more than George. Let's go ahead and look at another question. Let me put it up there. 2 owls delivered letters. Hedwig had to fly 3/5 of a mile, and Pigwidgeon had to fly 1/3 of a mile. Which owl flew farther? You could tell I've been listening to Harry Potter. And we're comparing 3/5 to 1/3. Half of 5 is 2.5, and I have 3, so that is more. 1/3, so half of 3 is 1.5. I only have 1, so it's less. More than half is greater than less than half. So 3/5 is more. Hedwig flew farther. Hopefully this gives you another strategy to put in your comparing fractions toolkit. If you have trouble with this one, go back and watch the video again. If it still doesn't make sense and you're very interested in learning it, go ahead and talk with your teacher.